Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm just traffic was not my friend today, so I'm a tiny bit late. So you'd think living in Atlanta for as long as I did, I'd be used to traffic. So
Yeah, and DC traffic has never been good either, so I get it. But working
uh,
from home now, that's a joy.
oh, I bet. Oh my gosh, I miss those days. We'll get back to that at some point, I'm sure. Hopefully not with the pandemic.
Yeah, we don't want to repeat that.
Never again. So while people are joining, I'm really excited about our topic for today. But I wanted you to know that I got the high performance book on audiobook. So I've been listening to it this week, and it's really a great book. And
It is.
there's so many things about it that I like so far. And I haven't finished it yet, but it breaks things down in really doable things. It's like it's not like this super goo. I mean, I don't know. You can probably explain it
It's
better.
practical. It's
Yeah,
practical. I mean, and you can apply it. All the principles you can apply. So I'm so happy that you got it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I, that's the one thing about having guests like you on the podcast that I feel like I get a free coaching session. So, and everybody who listens to it gets one too. And it's sort of like that sampling they do when you go to like to the mall. They have restaurants like Chick-fil-A or whatever that does that sampling outside. It's kind of like this is like you're sampling, so that way
Exactly. And I've had a few people reach out and say something, that they heard me on the podcast.
people,
I've just been asking them what resonated with you, like,
yeah,
or what stood out, or did you have something that just kind of, was like an aha moment? I mean, those are the things, right? Anything that makes us step back and think for a minute, it's good for us.
right, right. And I mean, and sometimes. I mean, I know we're going to get into more stuff here, but sometimes though, it's not necessarily something that maybe you didn't know. Maybe it's just something that you just need a little refresher on. Whoops.
Oh yeah.
Part of running late was my stand got lost somewhere in the shuffle. So, we're doing the old book prop session here.
That's
So,
okay.
so, but sometimes we just need refreshers. We just need to be reminded of things. So, anyway,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, is next week your another travel week for you?
It is. I leave on Monday for Belgium for EMC's advanced course. So it'll be exciting. Very exciting.
I bet. Hopefully, maybe we can get some tag along time. Maybe I don't know.
Yes. I talked to Tomas and he's open for it. So we just have to figure out the right time, obviously, because of the time difference too, right? And when things are happening. But yeah, I would love to connect.
Okay, great. Well, we're gonna figure out how to make that happen then.
Okay.
Yeah, we will. We definitely will. Well, this topic that when we were doing the recording for the episode, and it's like I think I said, I don't remember if I said it on the air or after, but there's just so many things that we could unpack. I mean, so many things.
Yes.
And with your experience working in all the different facets of like a traditional flower shop and weddings, and I mean everything that you did, and now coaching for those types of businesses, I don't know. I think pricing is always that thing that comes up that is always such a popular topic because people keep scratching their head wondering, what am I doing wrong? Or how do I make more money? Or, all those things. And there's a lot of people out there with formulas, but just like we talked about in the episode about how to kind of phrase that question in a way to get the answer you want.
Yes. Yes.
We don't have to rehash that necessarily, but if you
They
are
got to
intrigued,
see that one.
yeah, really. If you're intrigued by what I just said, go listen to this week's episode with Christy. So anyway, but I can't tell you how many times I hear it either from customers or I hear it just people asking me questions. or just people's frustration with Pinterest, or, you know, back in my day, it was always, you know, Martha Stewart wedding magazines, and, you know, all these people, you know, showing these, you know, like I said in my stories earlier today, you know, these big 6-figure weddings, and then they come to you and they want to spend, I don't know, maybe $5,000, you know, and it's kind of like, okay, and there's ways around that. And I know some of them may do with minimums and some may do with other things, but I
Yes.
really wanted to kind of unpack your thoughts on this. And I know we'll have a great conversation.
Well, what I thought was interesting, because we touched on this right before we were getting ready to hang up that day, and you saw my reaction, and I'm like, oh my gosh. That's a story for another time, and that's when we're like, we're going to do a live.
That's right.
Because here's the thing. I see it all the time, like in Facebook groups and things like that. The florists go in and they've got to unload, and they're like, here's the picture. Can you believe they only had a $500 budget? And this thing, you know, that they're showing is thousands and thousands of dollars. And I just I chuckle to myself, because I look at it and I go, seriously? We're supposed to educate them. We're leaving it to other event professionals to educate them on how much our decor is supposed to cost, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, what are you doing? You know, you get the opportunity to tell clients what you do and how you're amazing, and the professionalism that it takes and the know-how to be able to price it. So, because otherwise, how are they supposed to know how much something costs? I mean, really, they've never done this before. And it's not their job, it's our job to educate them about how much they should budget and things like that, right? So here's the thing. This is the way I look at it. If you want to stand apart in your market, I look at the core needs of people, right? There's 3 core needs: to feel loved, to feel safe, and to feel worthy or enough, right?
Right.
Most of the time, and I'm talking about weddings here, or in events, like special events, right? Because that's where we get big, you know, generally bigger budgets come along for that time. And often I think to myself, most of us are appealing to the feeling loved side of the core need of our customer, right?
Right.
So, like, lovely things, it's going to be a beautiful day, you know, see my wonderful Instagram feed of pictures of what I do, right? So, but as our messaging, we could really stand out because all of our competition is doing that, right?
Right.
But what if we chose to actually have messaging around worth, where we're actually talking about the worth and feeling enough that clients often have?
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but for instance, like, I would always say things like, you know, here you are wanting to have your beautiful dream wedding, and you come up and there's things that start to produce stress, and you're planning this thing that you've never planned before, and you're supposed to be enjoying this time, but you're feeling stressful because you're like, what is going to do? I have a dream and I want to bring it to life. How much? But I also have to have a budget. But you know what? I don't even know how much to budget. Here I am. I'm going to help you with that. If you're feeling like you don't know how much to budget for your flowers or for your decor in general, this is why you come to me. This is why I'm the professional. And you see, that is one of the very first things that they actually start thinking about, is how much it's going to cost, right? It's what causes the stress and overwhelm.
Yeah, so many times. And the thing is, and I think, and I have this phrase I use all the time, and I know I've said it on the podcast before, but it's like you're managing expectation, and then and part of that is education, like you've already mentioned that, we're talking about here. But then I don't know, Tim, I want to hear more because I feel like I've got questions and I can't wait to hear what you think.
Okay. Well, the other side you could take, I'm thinking, so the three core needs, right? We always talk about love. We talked about worth, like feeling like you have enough, or that you're worthy of being able to book that call with that florist, right? The other one is feeling safe to buy from. They want to trust you, right? Because they're having to feel safe in putting their vision into your hands.
Right.
So you could really speak to that too. And often we forget to speak to them about that because that's a huge thing that can come up for them. So I'm like, choose the path that's less taken to really attract the customer that you want. Because they're going to be drawn to you because you're willing to be a little bit more vulnerable, open, all of those things, right? So that's where I kind of go with the core needs. If you speak to those things, you're generally going to start attracting better people. And that's all about your messaging.
Sure. Okay. So, I get that, because a lot of what you're addressing is that part of this experience that you're transitioning into trusting you and your worth with this. It's interesting because, and we didn't really talk about this, I don't think, but when I've been on different like Facebook groups, I see this topic come up like we've already mentioned. And sometimes people are kind of like, yeah, you've got to educate. You need to tell them why you're charging this much money. And it seems very, the word I want to use is aggressive, but I know they mean it that way. I mean, I know they don't mean it that way. And they're just venting as they say it. But I know that, though, it's like you already said, this may be their first time doing anything like this. They really genuinely don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically,
how do you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the way I,
Oh, you broke up there.
the first 10 years of business, it was like, oh gosh, okay, I don't love to sell. Like, I'm an introvert, what are
A
you
lot of
talking
people.
about? I don't want to sell to people. I want to just be creative. I just want to be able to do and design. And this is why I got started. And then I started to realize, okay, this is a business. It's not a hobby. I got to take it seriously. Maybe I need to up my chops a little bit and figure out what I need to do. Is there some marketing I can do? And that was, over 20 years ago. So then I'm like, okay, I started to realize if I talk to them and address the budget up front, it's going to make them feel a little bit more at ease talking to me. And then I started to realize, okay, I don't want to be, everybody else is kind of putting like this top line, like I only take weddings, that are 5,000 or above. I only take and back then that was luxury, almost 25 years ago, that was like luxury wedding stuff. So when I got into it a little bit more, I started to realize, okay, but somebody could have a $2,000 wedding and it's like 10 people and I get to be really creative. And I want that kind of wedding. So I don't want to set myself into a situation where I'm already pricing out of where they might be. So the barrier to entry is that they're not ever going to even talk to me because I put that on my website, right? So instead I was like, well, what if I had kind of minimums based on the piece, like a bridal bouquet starts at, or and then I started to use that approach of what we talked about on the podcast of the three, right?
Right.
Flows, there's always three. So I started to do a pricing tool and it's not a calculator. I put together a pricing tool, and it's almost like an a la carte menu of, you want this, you got this, you've got 8 bridesmaids, you've got 4 bridesmaids, you have 17 tables, you've got 30 tables, right? No wedding is exactly alike. It's not like you can do catering for that, right?
Right.
So I put together this thing, but I gave them 3 categories, 3 choices in each category, so that they got to figure out their budget before they even got to meet with me.
Oh, okay. So like they were already coming in kind of with a plan, so to speak.
Yeah, they would self-select out then. They would already know that I had pricing, and that if it was something that they wanted, they would look at my site, right? They get to see who I am, look at my social media. Back then there wasn't social media.
Right.
It was the phone book, and I used to have, consultations at the dining room table before I even had a shop. I mean, so it was, how do I do this? How do I let them know that this is okay? You can not know something. And then it started, like, they started to realize, oh, okay, well, I don't even have to send her pictures before. Or they would get to the consultation and not give me their budget, but if they had already filled out the pricing tool, I knew the way I did my framework of running the consultation, I could figure out which category they were in. Probably about, maybe not even halfway through, maybe the first third of our conversation.
Well, I want to jump in real quick and say a couple people have said hi. So I want to say hi to Ace and say hi to Debbie from Australia for joining us.
Oh my goodness. Thanks for taking time.
This time of day works much better for them than
yeah.
well, if they're early birds.
True.
And we were running a little bit late because I was stuck in traffic. And I just want to say, today, in case you're just joining us, this is Christy Lopez, who is our guest this week on the podcast, and she does coaching for florists, creative businesses, all kinds of different facets of our industry. She has over 30 years of experience. She works with the EMC. She wears a lot of hats, and I'm really excited to be talking about this topic with her today. If you're joining us late, don't worry about it. We're gonna try to share this if Instagram lets us on our feed.
Yes.
That's the mighty Instagram. So the one thing I think about when hearing some of this, I love the idea that they can use your tool and kind of a la carte it, so to speak, to get a rough idea.
Yes.
But a lot of people probably heard you say a $2,000 wedding, that's not worth my time. I mean, I get that. But at the same time, a $2,000 wedding doesn't have to be the same level of investment with your time that a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, it can be a pickup wedding. It may be a design and they come pick it up. It could be an off day. Maybe it's a Wednesday wedding instead of a Saturday wedding. There's options. So and that's the thing that I love about
for success. And that's really to set yourself up for success. That's the key, to realize, okay, where the barriers of entry are for someone to reach out to you, where the things might be like the chink in the chain, what's not really working, figuring out what that is. And then, like, sometimes the answer is outside of yourself. You haven't had the opportunity to experience that before. So how do you figure it out? Well, that's where coaching comes in to play. That's also where masterminding comes in. That's part of my group is, the people that are clients with me also have a monthly mastermind call. And there's people from every walk of life there and in different countries in there. So when they come to the table, they might have an idea that you haven't ever even dreamed about.
Right.
And that's where that's where magic can happen, right? Things are different.
Yeah. Well, if you're following along and you have a question for Christy on this topic, feel free to either put it in the bubble down below or in the comments. Sometimes I just want to make sure I don't miss it. So just
yeah, it's such a small area where you can see where people are.
It
so.
is. The one thing I wonder too a lot of times, if you haven't developed that tool yet, which I feel like that's really important. I mean, I've heard other people doing something like that. And even still, I think that a lot of times people have issues conveying, like people don't always see the words. Like, they see this floral arch as a backdrop for their ceremony, and the idea that that could possibly be more than $250 is mind-blowing to them.
Yes.
And obviously it's way more than that. And so I'm not even trying to say that that's what it should be. I'm just saying their expectation, because they either have not done it before or they don't fully understand that situation as far as the amount of product, the amount of labor, the props, the, making sure it's weighted so it doesn't blow over, or, whatever the dynamic is hard. So I'm like, when somebody comes to you like that, initially, or they're trying to figure out how to do that, how, and I realize we're talking about two things. We're talking about how would you talk to that customer, but also how do people kind of in their own, like somebody who'd be your client or a florist, how do they get into that mindset of, and this sounds crazy to say, so this is two questions and I'm probably confusing you, but sometimes, I mean, I hear it all the time. Sometimes when people come back and they're like, it's how much? I mean, it's almost like you take that personally and you feel like, oh my gosh, they have just said the most insulting thing in the world to me, because they think that arch is $250 or $5, whatever. It was something ridiculous, one of these gigantic, super full ones and all this. And it's like, it's hard to check your emotion at the door sometimes because people are so clueless.
Especially as a creative, right?
Yeah. It's emotional. So I'm like, how do you kind of help people get through? I don't know. What do you?
Well,
I thought at you there.
I like to kind of go with, when I talk to people, I like to pose things as things back to them, right? And I like to preface something, and I'll be like, if there's going to be a salesy question, I'll preface it by, look, I'm about to ask you a salesy question. Are you okay with that? Like, this is stuff that's got to happen. It tampers down things a little bit. So you could say, I can see by your reaction that you're probably a little blown away by the cost of that. Do you have some questions for me around that? So that they feel safe to, well, one, you're recognizing the fact that they're not necessarily, it's not necessarily okay. How do I want to say that? Like, you're not surprised that they are surprised, but you also recognize that they're showing a surprise for something that is worth something, right? More than what they're doing.
Right. And that takes confidence, and that
Yeah.
takes knowing your business,
standing in your worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Standing in your worth and realizing, even in the times where you've got the butterflies in the stomach going, oh my gosh, what they're looking for. I haven't done that before, but I know I can do it. And you're already, as a creative, starting in your mind going like, okay, we could do this. We could probably put that together with that, but you're not sharing what's going on up here, but you're standing in your worth and being like, this is what that would look like. And when somebody, for instance, let's say they come and they've got this ceremony set up that they're showing you a picture of, and the things that they've been looking at have been more in that kind of premium high-end type of thing, right?
Right, right.
And then they're showing you that, but you know from talking with them that they're probably more in that kind of like popular trendy type of pricing. I look at them and just say, from what we're talking about, I just want you to know that we're looking at more in that premium pricing. Was that kind of where you were at in the pricing tool that you used, or were you really more into the popular trendy type pricing?
Mm.
That lets them know, oh, holy cow, maybe I need to adjust my I either need to adjust my budget or I need to adjust my what I want.
Mm. Right.
Do you see how you're kind of putting down the defenses and you're not being like, just
Right.
to send them off on something?
Yeah.
It's
No,
such a different way.
episode. Like you're giving them two good choices that aren't offensive, aren't aggressive, and then they can process that and then come back, with that.
Yeah. Dragonfly says something here.
Yeah, I want to read what Debbie wrote here. She goes, creating template responses with pricing and images has helped her so much. Also, communication, reply to email inquiries with questions, engage a potential customer with some actual communication. And this just shocked me, what she wrote here. And I love Debbie. Debbie from Dragonfly, in case you don't know this, because you're new to the podcast, she was a guest in season 2, and it was great to do an episode and kind of hear another wedding florist in person from Australia, kind of her perspectives. And she's just really insightful. Anyway, she says, I booked 4 weddings last week and every couple told me I was the only company who returned their emails. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm just like, that's just like leaving money on the table.
Yeah. If you're too busy to respond to potential customers and clients, something's wrong with your
process,
your system.
Yeah.
Because that what you're doing today affects your business 6-9 months from now. So if you're not physically, working on it, then you've got to do something to fix it. So she's so right. Yeah, Pinterest and Instagram is not going to talk to clients for you.
Amen.
I'm such a fan of even just doing the direct messages. Like as soon as if they reach out, just kind of like messaging them back and asking questions always gets people, like, oh, I can have a connection. Got to have the connection.
Yeah, that's absolutely, I mean, it's so true. Well, I feel like too, when so going back to what you said a minute ago, so you're giving your client, you're kind of helping manage their expectations. You're helping them through this process. By referring to their tastes and flowers as either, are they more interested in the premium experience or the trendy experience, which are both positive sounding experiences, but mean different things.
Yes.
Especially if they've been through some of your questions and have been through your sort of, I forget what you call it, but we'll say your template, so to speak.
Yep.
Then they're familiar with those terms. At that point, if they decide they want to reduce their expectation or reduce their, what they want, do you still, how do you feel about minimums? I hate asking this question because I know we talked a second ago about this, but
I don't even really talk about minimums when I'm in my consultation. It doesn't really come up. It's something that's on that tool, right? But it's not something, because I use the tool as a prerequisite in them. Like if they're not going to check out the tool and then schedule a consultation and talk like that, then I'm not giving of my time, because I wouldn't charge for consultations. Because when someone comes in to look for a diamond ring, do you charge them to look at the diamond ring? No. You want to sell them the diamond ring. You're not going to charge them to look at the rings. That's just nonsense, right? So when they come to me for that consultation, And money is kind of on their mind, on my mind, but not necessarily has to be right out there spoken. I'm concentrating on their vision, and I'm concentrating on building trust and that whole situation, and really listening and figuring out who is sitting in front of me, who's the buyer, who's the wanter, who's the you know,
Right.
it's a psychological thing that happens, right? That we get to kind of just work on. And it's a sales consultation. That's what it is. I'm not there to do anything except really bring them into my ecosystem and have them be a part of my business,
Right.
me doing their vision. So I'm not afraid. I don't talk to them about the minimums. I'm not afraid to talk about the money, but I'd rather talk about what they want and then help them adjust their expectations based on what they want to do. For instance, if they're like, well, I really want to do the premium, but I I need to probably stay with that popular trendy area. And then I would be like, okay, so let me help you with that. Are you open to me making some suggestions to you? Again, asking a question back, getting the permission, and then it makes them feel at ease that I'm not telling them like, oh, I see this here and it's going to be all, and you're going to be, and all there, the dad is probably sitting there going dollar signs floating away.
Yeah.
So it's a process. And one of the questions that you asked earlier was kind of like how you do the pricing before I would market my messaging by letting people know and not being afraid to share the back end of what I do, to show the what matters and what we do. And it's layers of what we do. Like the photographer, people who hire a photographer think the time is when they see them, when most of the time is on the back end.
Right. Right.
Right.
I've got to ask this question because I feel like I'm channeling somebody here. Um, okay, so prototypes. We've talked about this on various episodes in the past. It's been a little while. So I understand what you said earlier. Like, you don't charge them for that. Like when they come to see the diamond ring, you don't do that. I get it. But when they want a prototype, how do you handle that?
Okay, well, a prototype is done by booked clients, done for booked clients.
Okay.
And charged at the same price of the actual thing, because I should have my pricing structure enough that I'm making money on the back end. And even though I'm going to have to pay out of pocket to get all those flowers for that prototype then and not be using them, right? But if I'm smart, I can style it and design it when I'm doing something else. So I arrange the prototype time on my schedule. Not
flowers.
Yeah, and not around them doing a baby shower. Can we use that arrangement the same day? Do you see what I mean? Like, yeah. So I will make that. I'll give them kind of the ecosystem of how they can expect to get a prototype. I don't offer it. If they ask for it, then there's the stipulations around it.
Now that makes really good sense, because it's.
Oh, and I don't let them take it home.
Okay.
The minute you let somebody take it home and walk out the door, the next thing you know, you're like, well, I was staring at it and I just think that rose might be a little bit too pink. And no, then you have to go into the nuances of how roses, depending on how much sun they get, don't give them the extra time to sit there and kind of, minuscule it apart.
Right. Well, if you're joining us in the last 5 or 10 minutes, we've been talking about how to navigate this expectations and educating customers and things. I want to make sure that if you have a question, please put it in the comment area or in the
Yeah.
bubble below. We're not going to be here all night, but you know, for the next 20, maybe 30 minutes if we're lucky. We have a little bit of time here still. You know, Christy, one thing I think about that a lot of wedding florists, flower shops, they're all having to navigate, and that is the new normal. I have been, I could spend the next 3 hours talking about the challenges of sourcing flowers right now.
Yes.
And for example, a flower that I might normally be selling for $225 a stem, I am paying over that for right now. So you can imagine, you know, we heard one of the other wholesalers in town was selling a Playa Blanca for $5 a stem, and we were like, that's ridiculous. Well, then this week, or like in the last 48 hours, all the pricing coming out, like, oh no, that's probably not ridiculous anymore. How do you navigate that situation? Because, you know, if you're booking a wedding a year out,
Yeah.
then some, you know, thing like a pandemic happens, and prices kind of go a little crazy. You know, how do you navigate that situation?
A few different ways. One, during the consultation and in your contract, talking about the fluctuations, and these things are very important because the more educated you are with your clients, the more open and understanding they'll be.
Sure.
So, for instance, let's say it went up by 30%, right? In my contract, I had, I think it was like 20 to 25%, and it went up 30. I would be the hero. I always talk about this a lot, is to be the hero in the client's eyes, right? So I would call them and let them know, here's what's happening. Here is, you know, the portion in the contract with the price fluctuations. It has gone up. In fact, it's gone up 30%. I know in the contract it states 20 or 25, whatever it is in your contract, right? But I would say, here's what I'm willing to do because I understand what's happening and I really don't want you to be at a disadvantage. How about if I eat that 5% or that 10%, right? And so that we can come to an agreement here and be able to do that. Because one, they've already agreed to it in the contract, right?
True. Right.
So they know that this could happen. Two is, if you've had great communication with them and they have a level of trust with you, they're not going to think that you're just doing it to them. And
Right.
you as a business owner wouldn't naturally want to take and eat 5%. So it's a way for you, again, to be the hero. You're not trying to change the contract on them. You're not trying to do anything. And the other way is that from the perspective of selling it in the first place, I don't sell the flower. I sell my creativity, my designs, and that's how I sell who I am. It's imperative. It's imperative as designers and as these creative businesses that we learn not to sell by a stem, but to sell from our design, what we do, what we bring to the table. And that's charging what we're worth.
Well, it's all I can do. So this is happening whether you like it or not, but I'm just going to say amen. Thank you for saying that. I have been, I feel like that's so important. And what goes along with that is by selling a look, by selling your style, by selling your value, by selling all those things, if you have to make a substitution, which should be in your contract,
Yep.
Because of price. I mean, you know, like what I'm talking about, I mean, you're right, the 25, 30%, those things happen. And you also know, you know, certain times of year, those things can happen more, and maybe you should build that into your pricing, you know, like
Yes.
October, April, May, June. I mean, those are peak.
Seasonality pricing is
Right. and, and if and like I have shared in previous lives talking about quicksand roses or some of these very popular flowers, and you need to zig and zag, you know, that's okay, but building that in your contract. So my point in saying that was, you know, having that flexibility, you know, from what you just described is so important. I mean,
yes,
it can not only affect your profit, but I know that we talked a lot about mindset in your episode. It affects your mindset too.
it does. Well, and you can start to get imposter syndrome just from this very thing happening, right? Because you'll be like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I priced this, you know, a year ago, the prices are up so high. What am I going to do? Maybe I shouldn't even be doing this anymore. You know, and that's when I talk about separating how you're feeling and dealing with how you're feeling, and then actually dealing with the business side of things and going, okay, as a smart, savvy business owner, what do I need to do when my cost of goods starts to, you know, rise above what I've always budgeted for? Because it's going to be imperative to keep that going. And there's a part of keeping the emotion out of it when it comes just to the numbers.
True. And I think too, one thing you kind of touched on indirectly that I'll make a bigger point out of, and that is, you know, in your contract having that 25%, you know, give factor, you know, you may only be talking about 3 flowers. You may be only, you know, you're not talking about, I mean, you might be, but then you just have the burden of good taste. But typically it's not every flower on the table. It's just, it's a handful of flowers, and that maybe that kind of helps you to kind of navigate your own emotions around that, okay, it's just this one rose, or it's just the, you know.
Well, and here, let's be honest, having a software where you can quickly adjust your recipes and adjust your margins so that, you know, you can still stay within the price point that you actually had.
Sure.
And, you know, then use and say, okay, well, maybe perhaps I can get away with doing a few other less, you know, of those quicksand roses, and I'm going to up maybe, you know, a pom-pom, or, you know, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you got to be able to play. If you're not using a software to kind of help you with that, then you're actually spending more time, more money, just trying to fix it.
Mm-hmm. And probably like more stuff for hair color and things like that too, because
yeah,
pulling out like I'm losing mine, or it's going gray. So
stress factor.
yeah, I mean, so I love Debbie's question here, because this is something I've heard about, and in fact we've talked about with past guests before. What do you think about the business model where you charge for actual cost of goods and then a separate charge for design / service / preparation / delivery, etc., and you break that out? Because I've seen a lot of that, and I think it works at some levels. I'm not sure if it works for every level. What do you think?
I mean, what business model does that?
Well, there's a couple.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, pick another industry and tell me what other industry does that.
Yeah.
All it's doing is undercutting your worth for what you do. So just because you want to win a job,
what is,
starting out, I get it. There's a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they're like, okay, you know what? All you have to do is just pay me for the cost and then some of my labor and blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, maybe it would be better for you to go apprentice with somebody so that you can actually learn what you need to do, and then, you know, be able to really, is it a hobby or is it a business?
right. Well, I think that I know that we've had some guests on in the past that have they charge a design fee, which is way more than labor. It's like you're paying, it's kind of like when you, um, I mean, I've never had a self-portrait done, but if you are paying somebody to paint your self-portrait, the actual product itself costs nothing. You're paying for their skills, right?
Yeah.
And so that design fee can be, I mean, I've heard six-figure design fees before.
But
So,
as an artist, as a
right,
painter, I have never heard of a painter charging you for the cost of his paints and the canvas and the using the paintbrush, and then, oh, here, by the way, this is what it costs for me to paint you. Like, I've never heard of that before.
right.
To me, it's not a model. It's a confusing model for the customer.
I agree, it can be.
Really is a confusing model for the customer, because there's not really, I mean, when you go into a restaurant, they don't tell you, okay, this is how much you're paying for the food tonight, and this is how much you pay for the sous chef
Yeah,
and the chef to be able to create it for you. Like, why are we doing that to ourselves?
right. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. That's an angle I hadn't thought about, and that's really true.
Well,
Um,
I'm just curious as to why it would be chosen.
yeah. Well, the only scenarios I've heard it being chosen are scenarios where it's more of probably a $500,000 to more size wedding. And I don't understand it completely. And so one of these days, I maybe we'll have someone on that will go more detail in it. But yeah,
I see Debbie saying what she's saying. Well, I don't know if you have a Costco there and that type of thing where it's like a wholesale club warehouse type of thing where you can go buy food,
Mhm.
and I can buy steaks there, or I can go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse probably and maybe have, who knows, it might be the same cut of meat. We don't
Mhm.
even know,
Mhm.
and pay triple the price that I would pay for it at Costco.
True.
I'm paying for that chef to prepare the meal for me, to do the things for me, and to enjoy the fact that they design and design it well, so that I can enjoy the vision and
Mhm.
enjoy the fruits of their labor, right?
Well, I think I kind of want to, just with your experience, I think that Debbie's question here, and if anybody has a question, feel free to type it in. I think that it's an interesting dynamic that a lot of people, I don't think they get caught off guard as much anymore, but sometimes, like the way you have approached some of your techniques, I'm curious what you think. You know, it's that whole distinction and going, the $400 arrangement versus the $80 worth of flower cost. People don't understand why they're going to pay an extra $320 for that arrangement,
Yeah.
because they don't know all of the expenses associated with
Well,
running
you know
this.
what? Be kind of like an interesting reel, right? It's like you've gathered the $80 worth of flowers, and then you've got the things coming down, ticking off of, processing, ordering,
Picking up.
designing and education and everything like that, right? Where it's all in there, and all of a sudden you're like, and then here's the piece, the labor, the hard goods. I don't know, like it
That
could be
would be
even,
real.
right, like it was just like, here's this, and here's this. This is what we've got. This is what we do. This is how I transform. It's really showing people transformational is what we do, is transformational. It's
Right.
design, right? It's
Right.
not just flowers.
Right. So, and in Debbie's situation, she could film herself like driving to the market, the wholesale market, at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You're paying for me doing that too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's
You
that
can
kind of
just
crazy.
doing it where you're doing even a timetable of your day, and it's just one design.
Right.
right?
Well, and I want to say one other thing on this note, because, you know, you were talking about the restaurant. Now it's dinner time here and I'm getting hungry. But but that's beside the point. That's a me problem, not a you problem. Um, the thing that I find interesting is, and oh my gosh, today especially, I want to be real aggressive about this.
Okay.
To talk me off the ledge, Christy. So I want to say to that person, I want to say, when you go to, I don't know, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and you buy your dinner, do you say, oh my gosh, I can go to Costco and get this same slab of meat, you know, for, you know, $5?
Well, grandfather might say that, but you know, like,
okay, fair. But or the wine, are you gonna, you know, are you gonna sit here and say, I don't drink, so I have no idea how much wine costs, but I'm sure it's cheaper by the bottle at Costco than it is at a restaurant.
yes.
So do these people ask these same questions?
No,
so
but
talk me off the ledge.
you know, when you're going to the restaurant, though, that you're paying for the experience, the ambiance, the food, but the way you have the customer service. There's so much that goes into that, right? More than just, oh, it's just a piece of meat slapped on the thing. You know, I have gone to a place before when I'm like, gosh, okay, that really wasn't that good. And I probably could have made that at home. What did I do today? But I still realize that I'm not going to get up from the table and tell them I'm not paying for the food. And right.
Right.
So took the time for all of that.
Right.
And
well,
it's us. That's what I keep saying. It's up to us to educate them why we are worth what we charge.
right.
Now,
okay.
Somebody has a question.
Yeah. So the question is, for a newbie, what is the minimum I should be charging for labor? Now, I will say, I'm going to help Christy out here just a little bit, because it depends on where you are. It depends on what they're doing, what skill level you need. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So with those caveats, Christy.
Yeah, I was going to say newbie means, oh gosh, could mean so much. For me, I would really be looking at what there's also something different too. Am I the owner of the business, or am I hiring a newbie, or, you know, someone to design? That there's a difference there too.
Sure.
But if I am designing and it's my business and that's what I'm doing, then I get to decide, first of all, what's my level of education, because I am a strong believer in education, and you know, a strong believer in some organized feedback of education, not just, it's great to get the likes and all the, you excellent job, you did such a great job, but it's different to get some great kind of critical feedback on, here's how this could work better for you. If you could use this, add some balance here, there's a little bit of proportion that's off, you know, what you could do. There's a difference there. Now, if you know you have more to go,
right,
then you know that you can't price yourself out of the market of being new. You also have to look at your overhead and your costs and your competition, because I believe in community, but I also realize that when you look at your competition to know kind of how to set costs and have things where those standards need to be.
Good point.
So dealing with that, and then also like, okay, am I doing my markup on my margins correctly? And that's where I kind of go back. You could be at $25 an hour, you could be at 50, you could be at 60, 100, 125. It all depends. And I know that doesn't really answer your question. You're probably looking for a hard number, and I don't have one for you, because I would, if you were talking to me, I would be asking you a bunch of questions before we set a price structure of what you could do to start setting your prices for your business.
Right. And I think too, your labor as an owner might be valued differently than as an employee's, or or as a freelancer, or however you know, I mean, it's a really big topic. And I know we've had some past episodes like with Allison Ellis and some others that, you know, have touched on some of this. And so I'd invite you to maybe go back and listen to some of those episodes if that's, you might find that.
Yeah, because it's, and she brings up a great question though, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, knowing how to run your business and run it like a business, it's a great question to ask. And it's a vulnerable question to ask.
And I
So
appreciate asking.
it is, it's important to do it. And I will tell you, it's important to build it in. The fact that you're even asking what a minimum should be charged for your labor is smart, right?
Absolutely.
Many of us start out and we're like, we are the owners. We're just gonna, we're gonna eat it. We're gonna do it. We want the business. And then lo and behold, we start to build and we haven't built in that we actually get paid.
Right. We forget about that side of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And that's like a dagger to my heart. Don't do that to your bottom line.
Yeah.
Don't do that to my friend.
Yeah. It's so hard too, because, you know, what people don't realize is because they don't ask these hard questions at the beginning, you know, a lot of businesses don't make it, you know, past the first, second, third year because they get burned out because they're not making a living. And it can be challenging for sure. Just made an interesting comment going back to Debbie's question earlier. She says, if they don't understand, then they should buy their $80 flowers at Costco because they're not going to appreciate it. And I'm like, you know, I've said that, and I'm not saying I did the right thing, but I've, you know, I've worked in the wholesale house, and they're like, well, Trader Joe's, I mean, I just want to, like, you know, Trader Joe's has peonies for nothing. And I'm like, I can't even get peonies that cheap. So, I mean, they're just selling them at cost as a loss leader. And obviously they sell, you know, a loaf of bread for $20, so they can do that. And so,
I mean, it is a loss leader for them. It is. It brings people to them, and they're probably going to pick up something else while they're there. And I mean, let's face it, if you had a retail shop, like when I had retail, I had a few things that were in my shop that were loss leaders because I knew that it was a draw. It's, you know, it's still smart business. We don't love it because we're the ones that are, you know, doing flowers. But you know what? We do what we can right now. I mean, we really have to just get by. And
right.
I want to see people thrive.
Yes.
And there are people that are thriving. And no reason why you can't either. I mean, I made it through 3 recessions, and there's no reason why you can't do that. You need to hunker down. You need to know how to fix the bottom line. If you're not making a profit, you've got to go through and maybe rethink of how you're doing things. Maybe the containers, the vessels that you're using are just too expensive. Maybe you've got to figure that out again. What can I do differently?
Well, I think too, a lot of times, you know, people go to rent a space and they rent a space that's too big, too expensive, you know, in a nice, you know, sort of high-end area because they're hoping for foot traffic. Or maybe all you really need is a studio with bare bones because most of your business is weddings, and, you know, people don't, you're not after foot traffic. So, excuse me. Yeah, it's crazy. High five.
They will come.
High five for making it through 3 recessions. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I didn't spend time in my office crying like a baby going, oh my gosh, Lord, what in the world did I do? Why did I make some of these choices, right? Give me wisdom so that I can change this or make a different, you know, somehow. But, you know, thankfully I had good business people, especially my dad, my grandfather, all of that. Both of them really just were like, okay, they didn't care about the flowers. Like, I love the flowers. They didn't care about that. They're like, show me the numbers, girl. I'll be like, oh.
Well, Yes, people like that make me cringe, but we need people like that. Because I'm the flower obsessed one. But at the same time, you when it's all said and done, you've got to make the book, the bang, the
Yeah.
whatever nowadays.
Well, I'd be the one that, saw the Letherus, the sweet peas, right, on the pre-book going, okay, I've just got to have them, right? And then I didn't want to put them in any arrangements because I loved having them there in the shop, right? Don't sell that, or put it out for $10 a stem. I don't care. We don't sell those.
You've been stalking me. Okay. Yeah. I feel that.
But then you're like, what in the world? I'm going to let that die in my cooler? You've got to be kidding me. I need to put those in some arrangements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
it's like I said, that right and left brain kick in, and you're like, I'll probably be talking to myself till I'm in my 80s. Who knows?
yeah. I feel like a lot of times my head should be leaning this way because I'm definitely more left than right, but that's okay. It takes all kinds. If you're just joining us, I know we're not going to be on here much longer, so I thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Try to save this so you can go back and watch it on Instagram. If you are new to the Flower Podcast, or you follow us on Instagram, but you're like, what's a podcast? I have no idea what this is. Go to our website, theflowerpodcast.com, and you can see our gallery of guests. We even have some archived. We've talked to today while on our feed, and with some of our guests and about some of our guests. And Christy is this week's guest on our podcast. And so I can tell you now that anything you heard today is in addition to what she said there. So you didn't hear much repeats.
That's true.
Yeah,
we talk
definitely.
a lot, can't we?
Yeah. And I should also, and I would be remiss, being a fellow podcaster, I will say she has a podcast too. And I've forgotten the name of it because I'm still stuck in
Business Success for Creatives.
That's right. And I've listened to that song, and it's really got some great stuff on it too.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And anyway, so there's so much going on with Christy. We're just thankful that she could go live with me this week. This is sort of her bubble week here between a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
She's about to go to Belgium, right? Next week?
Yeah. Yep.
For the EMC. And we're going to try to figure out how to go live again from Belgium and see kind of what they're doing there through the EMC, which
yes, so you can see some of what the students have done. It's really an exciting time, so I'd love to share that.
Yeah, I can't wait.
For those of you that want to know where you're at in your business, I do have a quiz that's on my website, and feel free to fill it out, kind of see where you're at. You're kind of like there's 5 different levels, and just answer the question, see where you at business minded wise for your business. I'd love for them to check that out if they want to.
Yeah, and the kind of coaching you do, I think creates real change. Because of the way it taps into the way our brains work. And I know just a lot of other podcasts I've listened to, it is not just feel good guru, burn the candles and the incense and all that kind of coaching. I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to be rude, but
they're just a straight shooter.
Right. Yeah. It's like science-based, real mindset coaching. So would you mind, because I'm sorry, Sailor Wiley, sorry, she's asking you to repeat your website and your podcast.
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see here. ChristyLopez.com is the website. And then the name of the podcast is Business Success for Creatives. And there's a link on the website there, so you can link to the podcast there too if you want. Yeah, I just, Scott, talking to you and the questions that you ask, because you have so much time in the industry as well, just like I do, the minds of florists and what's keeping them, what might be holding them back from really experiencing transformational business, right? And just to enjoy their creativity, to get back to the point where you're not having to worry about everything and you can enjoy designing. I think the cost of the flowers, the things that have been going up, and what this has done in the last couple of years kind of gives us that stress, right? And part of that stress relief is to design. And I'm just want to encourage you all to go back to your love of design and creating, and recognize that you have a gift that most people don't.
Yes.
And I would also say that please charge for it.
Yeah. It goes back to the chef example, or the violinist, or whatever any kind of creative business that, taps into your talent, taps into your gifts, if you will. Whether it's your visions, your eyes, how you see things, how you put things together, how, everyone has a different style, and some of them may be similar, but in your area, you may be the only person that sees things that way and creates that way. And I appreciate what you said, Christy. Thank you. And I feel like, we've both of us have seen a lot of wonderful, talented people just hit that emotional wall, hit that psychological wall that stops them from getting to that next level, either because there's pain points in their business or in their thinking. And this is where I feel like, coaching and that kind of mentoring, that kind of relationship investment really makes a difference. So I know we're getting late. Christy, thank you so much for doing this live.
This has been awesome. I love talking with you and laughing with you, and we can just shoot it straight. That's good.
Amen. And so anyway, if you just joined us, thank you. If you've been tagging along the whole time, thank you.
Yes, so much.
Yeah, my battery's getting low, so
okay.
we're gonna hop off. We're gonna hop off before something happens. And thank you guys so much. Thank you, Christy, for joining.
Thank you.
And
so great. Love talking to you.
Take care.
Bye.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.